Golf Central on YouTube, brought to you by TaylorMade.
The 120th U.S. Open will be conducted next week at Wingfoot Golf Club, but the field will not include a two-time U.S. Open champion Brooks Koepka. The 2017 and 2018 winner at Erin Hills and Shinnecock Hills made the announcement earlier today through his own social media platform, saying the following: "Unfortunately, I have decided to withdraw from next week's U.S. Open. I'm looking forward to getting healthy and competing at 100% again very soon." If you take a look at the year that was for Brooks Koepka, yes, it's one he'd like to likely forget. 13 starts, didn't win a golf tournament, only had those two top tens. Had that encouraging week at the RBC Heritage with that very good Sunday, but despite that, finished 104th in the FedEx Cup standings, and missed the cutter, had to withdraw from 6 different events, so virtually half of his starts this season. Gary Williams alongside Trip Eisenhower. And Trip, look, every time he got out there, we were thinking maybe this was the week. Does this surprise you at all?
Not really. I think he did this the right way at the beginning. He had the stem cell treatment. He tried to avoid possible surgery. We don't know if that's exactly what it is, but you would assume that's what it is because he had the time off with the coronavirus. He had that long time off to heal it if it was going to do. And then what really happened, this is at the PGA, when you're protecting one area in your golf swing, you hurt another one, and this is what happened with his hip by what was going on with his knee. So if you look at this is a logical progression in something that just persists and doesn't get better. And it started last year in Korea, and it's just one of those things that's now come full circle. But if you look at this from a long-term perspective, it's the same thing with Tiger Woods. Okay, he's going to play in plenty of U.S. Opens coming up. If he misses this one, sure. He wasn't playing a lot of golf anyway, so it's not like he was coming in with confidence. And if there is a major that he would hate to miss, it would be the U.S. Open. But who knows? I mean, with how big a procedure this could be, he could be back in time for the Masters, so this may not be the finishing of his major season, but at least we know the U.S. Open's out. But again, I take this is a long-term perspective and get healthy, get it behind him so he can get back to playing golf the way Brooks Koepka can play.
You know, obviously we're at the beginning of a new season, but we still have 2 majors in this calendar year. He really is the exception of the players in the top 15. Everybody else has not only been healthy, but had really, really good seasons, a lot of production. But his injury just didn't allow him to do so.
Exactly what it was. I mean, and you can chalk it up to that now. And now once he gets better, then we'll see. And I think he'll quickly recover from this once that's behind him. Yeah,
a win in 17, a win in 18, and he's the one who pushed Woodland last year, finishing second. Well, this week marks the 49th edition of the ANA Inspiration at the Dinah Shore Tournament Course at Mission Hills Country Club in Rancho Mirage, California. And as opposed to being the first major in professional golf in the calendar year, it will be contested as the second of 4 majors in the women's game this calendar year. When you take a look at the highest-ranked players in the field this week, Danielle Kang from the United States and Nelly Korda, also an American, the top 2 players. And Danielle Kang was the one who burst out at the restart and got those 2 quick wins. Nelly Korda looking for her first win of the year. And when you take a look at some of the notable groupings for day one, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time, that is 8 o'clock out in California, Inby Park, Brittany Lincecum off in twosomes, Danielle Kang and Anna Nordquist at 11:09. And then you see all the way down to 4:36 in the afternoon wave with Stacey Lewis and a past champion, Pernilla Lindbergh. Joining us now, Lisa Cornwell, who is in Rancho Mirage. And Lisa, historically, we always associate high temperatures when the PGA Championship was in August. This week at the ANA Inspiration, high temperatures are going to be a huge story from beginning to end, are they not?
Oh, Gary, you're exactly right. I'm standing out here absolutely baking. I need a sun umbrella. But look, let's talk about the differences for this championship. And you mentioned it's not just the weather, but a lot has happened with this golf course. I spoke with the superintendent, Jared Taylor. He said about $2 million in renovations. Most notably, they cut out about 100 trees, and every single tree they trim back. That's because the base of this golf course is Bermuda. It's heavily overseeded when the ladies are here in March. Now, obviously, that Bermuda is into play, and they want the turf-free establishment. They wanted it to be as pure as it could be. Now, Brittany Lincecum's a player who's won here twice, 2009, 2015. I spoke with her today about these changes. She said, you know, at first you get out there visually, it looks a lot more open, but you get over your ball in the rough and you really have to spend some time trying to find it. She said if it sits down, it can be up to 2 clubs longer. You get around the greens, you have to deal with the grain. So those treacherous, tight-lie, grainy chips come into play. Now, here's where it gets better for them. On the green, she said that it's running just as beautifully as ever. They're very smooth. But again, going back to the superintendent, 12 on the step meter in the morning. This Bermuda is thriving in this high heat. So it jumps down to about 11.2 or 11.3 in the afternoon. So a lot of difference in terms of speed between the afternoon and the morning. Now, going back to Brittany Lincecum, the story that broke yesterday, Charlie Hall testing positive for COVID-19. I asked Brittany, who was playing alongside her in the practice round alongside with Ashley Buhai. She said, obviously, she's concerned, but she was never inside with her, never in real close proximity. So she feels very comfortable about where she is. She's watching her symptoms, getting her temperature checked. As for the commissioner, well, you have to think since the restart, this is tournament number 6. Only 3 players have tested positive so far. So all things considered, Mike Wan feels pretty good about where things are.
I thought this was going to be harder than it's been through 6 weeks. That doesn't mean, as Heather and I talk about all the time, that doesn't mean the hard part hasn't hit yet. And I think if you're one of those players or caddies that's tested positive, or probably just as bad, which sounds terrible to say from a health perspective, been hit with close contact quarantine, which means you actually tested negative, but we'll see you again in 14 days. You may disagree on how easy or not this has been. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's not an enjoyable life on tour. We talked a lot about it last week with a bunch of players and caddies at Walmart, which means, you know, part of the tour life is the social part. It's getting to know the sponsors and the fans. And I was concerned about leaving people behind. I mean, you know, we could have gone to Scotland and hopped on that charter with 10 less people, and you're not coming home until you test 2 negatives. Or, you know, case of Charlie, you know, flying here to be part of a major that I know is a big deal to her and have to sit there and not play. That hurts. I think I've told you guys this before, but the one thing that brought me peace in this whole thing was when Heather, quite frankly, brought me the idea of us not really allowing the 2020 to change somebody's status so that in 2021 they can return to the tour where they were at the beginning of 2020.
And it is those options that Mike's talking about that really gives these players some peace. You think about Jin Young Ko not being here to defend her title, which normally would be shocking, but she wants to stay safe. And then there's the other players who may not dominate the front page of the leaderboards. They have their card, but they hover around cut lines. Well, they don't have to risk possibly traveling to a Portland, for example, if they don't feel safe, because they know, like the commissioner said, that they will keep their cards, Gary, for next season.
Lisa, thank you very much. Mentioning those temperatures tomorrow, 99 as a high, and then triple digits through Championship Sunday, topping out, scheduled to be 108 on Sunday. Let's take a look at the golf course conditions, brought to you by the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America. Lisa pointed this out, the transition from those overseeded rye conditions when they play in late March, early April. No, it'll be Bermuda grass, wall to wall, fairways rough, greens, the greens stimping out at about 12.5. Jared Taylor, the superintendent there at Mission Hills Country Club. Now, speaking of Bermuda grass, well, let's flash back to June of 2014 when the U.S. Open and the U.S. Women's Open were played in consecutive weeks at Pinehurst, won by Martin Kaymer and Michelle Wie, winning those national championships in back-to-back weeks. Well, today, the USGA announced that it will move several of its operations, including its equipment testing center, from its headquarters in Liberty Corner, New Jersey, to the village of Pinehurst in North Carolina. The arrangement with Pinehurst includes a commitment by the USGA to bring 4 additional U.S. Opens to Pinehurst after the already scheduled 2024 U.S. Open. Here was Mike Davis of the USGA earlier today.
What I'll say, it's pretty amazing, but if you take those 5 U.S. Opens and then you take the other things that we're mentioning here, This, over that period of time, is estimated to be over a $2 billion impact to the area. And that's not even noting, the international and certainly the domestic exposure that some of these big championships give. So we think it's, in a lot of ways, it's groundbreaking, and we couldn't be more excited. We think we will be breaking ground spring of 2022 with the 2 buildings, and then we will be completed sometime in 2023.
We are humbled that the USGA has named Pinehurst No. 2 as the first U.S. Open anchor site. With 4 more championships coming here in 2029, 2035, 2041, and 2047, following our next U.S. Open in 2024. 8 U.S. Opens in less than 50 years is a real testament to our partnership. It is an unprecedented distinction that recognizes Donald Ross's masterpiece of No. 2's legacy as a great championship test for the greatest golfers that will truly stand the test of time.
You look at the immediate future of the U.S. Open. Next week, it's Winged Foot in Mamaroneck, New York, then back to Torrey Pines, the Country Club in Brookline, Mass., L.A. North, the Los Angeles Country Club. To note, 2020, 2022, 2023, Gilhan's did restorations on all 3 of those. And then, of course, Pinehurst Resort, it returns there again to the No. 2 course in 2024. Joining us now is Jaime Diaz. And Jaime, how in your mind do you think Pinehurst pulled off what is a massive commitment to not only the village of Pinehurst, but more specifically to Pinehurst, the resort, and No. 2, the golf course, in hosting what will be 5 U.S. Opens between 2024 and 2047. How did they do this?
I guess they earned it, Gary, honestly. I mean, I think 1999 was such a revelation. It went so well against a lot of skeptics thinking that this little place couldn't handle a U.S. Open, and the golf course might have been problematic because it was so different. But in fact, it played beautifully, and the logistics were great, and they made a lot of money, and the television worked real well. And every time they came back, the state of North Carolina welcomed them with the tax incentives and all kinds of things that made it all work even better. And that's why it just progressed to this idea of, now actually being, in some ways, the de facto home of golf in America.
Jaime, what do you think is the most noteworthy aspect of this expanded relationship between Pinehurst and the USGA as it pertains to how it will actually impact the industry of golf and also the people who play the game?
Well, a lot of people come through Pinehurst, of course. They're talking about a $2 billion, amount of money that's going to come into the state by 2047. But I think more than anything, it just is a place where people will gather as the sort of St. Andrews of America. And I think that's going to be a central focus for people who want to make pilgrimages to golf. And that will expand Pinehurst's brand and its reach. I also think that it expands the U.S. Opens, or at least it defines it in a more narrow and I think better way in terms of where the golf courses are going to go in the future. They're not going to go to as many places, but every one of them is going to be a classic.
With that being said, do you think that this announcement is the first big shoe to drop regarding the USGA tightening that rotation in the decades to come?
There's no question, Gary. I mean, obviously, we got Pinehurst is going to be, the main anchor. But beyond that, I would expect that it'll be Pebble Beach and Oakmont, with Winged Foot and Shinnecock Hills getting in there a little bit. And then after that, just some occasional visits by places like Marion and the Country Club and maybe Los Angeles North and places that really have, great architecture, great golden age kind of bona fides, but not a lot of places. It's going to be more the U.S. Open that we remember from the 50s and the 60s in terms of, having to drive it really well, heavy rough, ball control at a premium, nerves and everything that plays such a big part when the greens are so hard and fast. I think they want to get back to the old-fashioned classic U.S. Open, and this is the big first step, as you say.
Jaime, as always, thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary.